Welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. Today, Paul welcomes back Wade Lightheart to talk about being a spiritual warrior. Wade is the host of the Awesome Health podcast and an advisor to the American Anti-Cancer Institute. He is a 3-time Canadian all-natural bodybuilding champion and former Mr. Universe competitor, and he was a vegetarian while training and competing. In addition to writing, coaching, and presenting, Wade is the co-founder and president at Bioptimizers. Keep listening to the end of the podcast for a special offer from Wade and our podcast sponsor, Bioptimizers. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review at the top of the show page on Spotify or at the bottom of the show page if you are listening on Apple Podcast. Your opinions matter, and your ratings help us to grow and help more people to be healthy, find freedom of body and mind, and to live their dreams. And now, here are Wade and Paul.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. Today, I have my buddy Wade Lightheart, founder. Are you founder or co-founder of Bioptimizers?
Co-founder.
Co-founder. He's got a partner, Wade Lightheart, with me, and I'm sure you're familiar with Wade. He's done many great Bioptimizers commercials with me, ads for you guys for all his great products, which I actually use every single day. And I always love talking to Wade because he's one of the deepest people I know, and he's really, really authentic in everything he does. And he's sitting here about to turn 50, and he looks like a young, fit man, which I'm proud to see. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
And we have a lot to talk about today, but I've titled the podcast The Spiritual Warrior. We're going to talk about a lot of things that have to do with really just managing the transition the world is in, and we're going to catch up with Wade and what he's up to and what his company's doing for research. But we're going to talk about some of the things we all need to be thinking about right now as we're dealing with the very interesting minds at the top of the food chain, so to speak, that have very strange and often, shall we say, not very balanced ideas about human beings and the planet. But it's all part of life, and it keeps the show very interesting, doesn't it, Wade?
Well, we all need polarity in life in order to live here in duality.
Yeah. So, we got to have some negative polarity holders, and we certainly have them. And, Hitler was one of them, but he didn't have the internet, so he was a little slower getting around. These guys seem to have put the world into a big, huge electronic net, and they're trying to tighten it up, but we all have our own ways to deal with that, and that's what we're going to get into today. But Wade, why don't we start off with what Bioptimizers is doing research? I know from chatting with you in the last several months that you guys are doing a lot of research on probiotics and things like that. You want to catch us up with what you guys are up to?
One of the most beautiful things that happened in the last couple of years is my business partner, Matt, who's an extremely sophisticated tester. And he was on a trip to Serbia on an unrelated issue dealing with computer science and artificial intelligence with one of the people that works on our tech team. And serendipitously, this individual introduced him to the head of probiotic research at Birch University in Croatia. And it turns out Monia, who is a wonderful lady and very bright, was running a facility to see what is happening in the world of the microbiome.
Great.
And she's very concerned about what's happening in the world. And she says that we are entering within the next 10 to 20 years what she calls the post-antibiotic age. And that is that all the antibiotics, which have saved millions of people, let's face that, are not going to work anymore.
Yeah, due to antibiotic resistance.
That's right. And this was cross-correlated with a friend of mine, Dr. Filtzer, who was part of the team from Harvard that put the first stent in the body. And he had suggested to me a couple of years ago, he said, over the course of, and I'll come full circle here in a second, he had suggested, he'd come to the same conclusion. He said, surgery has expanded exponentially in the course of his career. He's now about 80 years old. And he said, when they did surgery before, and heart surgery, they had to open people up and it'd be 6-8 months, a year to recover and stuff like that. Now they come in and the little micro incision and a laser and a camera comes in there and they do whatever they need to do to repair the heart. He said, but the challenge is today, the surgery is advanced. He said, but one of the biggest risks to patients is the antibiotics don't work. They die from infections. And he was able to successfully, I think he's one of the most successful people running a wound healing clinic on how to help people recover from when they can't resolve infections using antibiotics. And so I had two very bright people that had come to the same conclusion, one who was working in microbiome, one who was working in surgery. And when Matt met her, he said, well, I think we'd like to do some experimentation on how we can enhance the microbiome to make super probiotics and to understand what's the role of enzymes and how they interact with our bodies. I mean, there's over 25,000 different enzymatic reactions that we know of and probably thousands more that we don't. And he said, would we be able to do some experiments at your lab? Mm-hmm. And she said, we would, but we can't afford all the technology. We're not funded through the NIH and all these sort of things that, all the problems with that happens, that the flow of money determines the course of the investigation.
Sure it does, as we know from the pandemic.
So Matt, being a great tester, said, well, what would happen if we were able to fund you with the appropriate machines so that we could run the proper tests to see what would happen? And she said, well, that'd be really amazing. So we bought them a bunch of equipment that they could start doing the research. And so now we have, I think it's 13 or 14 PhDs and master students that are running experiments every single week where we're getting rapid data on all of our products, how we can enhance them, what's the cofactors that make the probiotics grow, what mediums they grow on, do the probiotics take out gram-negative or gram-positive bacteria? Can we enhance the antioxidants they produce or the nutrients they turn out? And it turns out you can. Mm. And we're very excited with some of the breakthroughs that we will be releasing over the next 12 to 18 months in correlation with the book that we're going to be publishing early next year is going to come out to the market. And it's going to explain a lot of what appears to be the variances in dietary styles, what actually these probiotics do and how we can grow them and make super probiotics that will allow us to not just survive, but thrive with the coming evolutionary challenges. And so we've been able to identify specific cofactors, vitamin D, magnesium, other cofactors, and how they will enhance the growth and development of probiotics, how they enhance the activity of enzymes. And it's extraordinarily exciting times. And we're very grateful to start bringing these discoveries to the marketplace in a way that allows people to try them themselves and see the difference of why maybe an enzyme from Bioptimizers or a probiotic from Bioptimizers has superior qualities than something they might have before, because it's based on science and experimentation and with a noble cause, which is to enhance humanity.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It brings up some thoughts. I think it'd be interesting to ask you about, some of the factors from my own research on the microbiome that are really critical is one, your diet, two, the effects of the terrain by medical drugs, alcohol, and other drugs. The diet, of course, contains all the chemicals in food and the toxins in food, but then psychological stress. And, one of the things the reason I bring this up is because if you've got somebody that doesn't have very good mental, emotional self-management and they don't have a very good diet, even the strongest probiotic in the world is still competing against a constant force.
Correct.
So it's kind of like, you could get the best Navy SEAL in the world, but he can't hold back a big wave, right?
That's right.
So what are your thoughts with regard to what people need to be more aware of so that even when they're using, like I use your Leaky Gut Guardian, you change the name of that.
Yeah, that's going to be called, it's now called Biome Breakthrough. And
Biome
the reason why
Breakthrough.
we say it's Biome Breakthrough is we can actually legitimately prove this in a scientific setting
Right.
of why it is a breakthrough in helping people recover from the damage of overt chemicalization in our society. So, for example, Matt's a ketogenic guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a plant-based guy.
Mm-hmm.
One of our lead researchers, Katrine, who does our genetics and epigenetics, I would qualify her as more paleo style. And I see that there are fundamental aspects that are 80% of commonalities in whatever dietary philosophy might work best for you. And that's largely determined by your microbiome, the kind of, what would I say? I guess what neurotransmitters you're dominant on. So, for example, if you go back to neurochemistry is the only bridge that we were able to ascertain is a crossover between Eastern medicine and Western medicine. So the Chinese model cross-correlates with neurochemistry. And a lot of the neurochemicals that make our brains operate and regulate our moods are actually produced by bacteria in our guts.
Yeah.
So your dietary philosophy now, using technology, you can look at, well, what nutrients am I deficient in or have trouble absorbing or utilizing? What microbiome are present in my body? What are the foods that they eat? And what are the essential elements that make them grow better or take out, gram positive or gram negative bacteria? What makes the enzymes amplify their effect? And it turns out, from one perspective, we're not really feeding ourselves. We're feeding the probiotics, which actually feed us. And we're accelerating the response rate through enzymatic therapy. And we kind of understood that from an experimental level. In other words, through anecdotal, but good old biofeedback, pay attention to what's happened. How do I feel? How does this work for me? Well, now we're actually to validate that in a scientific setting. And our team of researchers are going to start producing papers that will carry a lot more weight, particularly in our medical community who are desperate to validate things that they may know, but are forced by institutional authorities to follow a certain line of thinking. And they're restricted in what they can say or what they can't say. But when you have competing scientific evidence that can illuminate what might be obvious to someone such as yourself or myself through our own experimentation and working with thousands and thousands of people, well, we can now get scientific validation. So we're delighted that we're one of the few supplement companies that have that kind of research power and facility, that we can get results, real world results that can enhance the production of our products. And it's very exciting times for us. And we've been wanting to go there for such a long period of time. And now we have the tools to be able to validate what we've known anecdotally.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying because having studied soil science quite extensively, what you learn from soil science is exactly that. It's the we'll call it the microbiome, because it's quite often referred to that in the soil as well, actually feeds the plants and the mycorrhiza fungi. So the nature and the quality of the soil determines the health of the plants, because they're actually feeding the plants. And if you don't have enough diversity in the microbiome, then you cannot support the health of the plants, because they don't have enough nutrients to deal with the changes in the environment, be it heat, wet rain, animal pests, insects, parasites, things like that. So you also see in the study of the microbiome, if you like in some of my older farming books here, and if you look in the book Science and Agriculture by Arden Anderson, D.O., who's a rare guy because he's an osteopathic physician, and he's also got a PhD in soil science. He shows, for example, that what we call vitamins are actually plant hormones. So point I'm making is that the plants are interacting with the microbiome, and there's a constant sharing of resources, be it hormones or chemicals of various types, nutrients of various types. And so what I'm saying is the external environment of the plant system and the root system is actually creating the internal environment of the plant. The internal environment of the plant is then mutually supporting the external environment. But when we look at what humans are doing, they're completely destroying the external environment, but then turning to pills to try to change the internal environment. So I'm curious, what do you think your research might tell us about what we need to do externally so that we are actually using the same scientific awareness, so that we're not just taking pills, but we're actually saying, okay, this shows us that we've got to make these changes outside of us as well? Have you put any thought into that?
Yeah, that's you're right on the nose with that, as per usual. One of the interesting elements, and there are universal aspects, but there's also regional components. And what I mean by that is, so for example, a plant or a livestock raised in, say, Italy, under what appears to be the same conditions, then something over here in North America produces a different result. And for example, how many people have said, I can't have gluten, I can't tolerate it, can't have anything like that. They go to Italy
and they can eat it.
And they can eat all this stuff, and they're like, well, what's different? Well, it's these other elements, these little workers that are doing the work inside the body that, though, say the wheat grown in Italy or the livestock that grew on whatever plants were growing there, got all the nutrients in a certain way for that regional area. And in North America, that would be different. Now, not to say one is bad or one is good, but it's producing a different result.
Mm-hmm.
And so that diversity creates what I call external conflicts downstream in dietary philosophies. And so Matt and I are right now just completing, I think it's an 800-page book. I think we're up to 800 pages about how does one go about the process of selecting the right food for them in the region that they are, based on the goals that they have, and then how do they enhance their own process of manufacturing the key elements that supports physical vitality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have physical vitality, that will also field cognitive vitality. And when you have physical and cognitive vitality, well, then you start opening up into the spiritual domain.
Yeah, it takes you there pretty naturally.
It is a natural evolution. And so a lot of people are like, well, I want to know all the details. Well, I understand that. It's something I've been studying for a long period of time, but it's like, okay, let's start with first principles. Let's start with how do you feel and what happens and respond to that. And you kind of whittle things down so you find the right diet and the right philosophy for you, which is based on your microbiome, what kind of chemicals you got exposed to, how many shots of this or that you had as a youth, and et cetera, et cetera.
What you got to clear out.
Exactly. And so I believe that, humans, which are very different than other species in the fact that they can actually make bigger adjustments to where they live, what they're able to adjust to. And I think in today's world, we have to recognize, well, you are where you are, and you are who you are. The key is, how do you take those basic premise and optimize it in a way that supports you? And that's why we called our company Bioptimizers.
Yeah.
Where I'm dietary agnostic. I'm like, I don't know, like, you follow a selective process. And what we'll do is we'll do our side of it. And that's why we have different enzymatic products. That's why we have different probiotic products. That's why we have key minerals and vitamins, like some of the new products that we'll be releasing in the coming 12 to 18 months, where we're using enhanced enzymes, enhanced probiotics, enhanced mineral formulations that we know support certain diets, certain microbiomes, and certain personalities. And it's remarkable. And I believe ultimately in our fullest expression as a human that we can we can experience extraordinary levels of health and vitality and cognitive capabilities in a variety of different conditions and on a variety of different diets if you understand how we transform what we put in our bodies and then how that conversion process is. So the conversion process is dependent on the microbiome, the enzymatic capacity, and the key elements that will enhance what you're dealing with yourself, or you want to introduce, say, some of these key, symbiotic relationship microorganisms that will give you more choices in your life. And so what most dietary philosophies, I think, have worked in the modern world to narrow down the components that are negatively affecting you. So you stay within a dietary lane at a certain point, but you can only reduce so far. I believe that we're here to expand our choices and options, and that may involve temporary restriction to get to the base elements. And then once you get that mastered, I think you can start putting in some of these elements that will allow you to increase your range of choices and have a greater expanded experience as a human on the planet. And that's what I'm all about. I love that. And it's really fun because I want people to be, as I say, spiritual billionaires, spiritual trust fund babies. And in order to do that, you need a wealth of the essential resources that produce life force energy.
Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to share some big news with you today. This month, anyone with an internet connection will be able to learn my holistic system of exercise and conditioning. That's because we're finally putting one of my most important advanced training programs out to the digital world. That's Integrated Movement Science Level 1, which is now available online. IMS1 includes my physiological load assessment, postural assessments, stretching and mobility assessments, how to perform corrective mobilizations, instructions on improving stability, and a huge library of exercises, all of which are game changers for any practice. The physiological load assessment alone makes a huge difference in your client results and keeps them from getting injured and progressing more naturally and fully, which results in excellent walk-around marketing for you. Whether you're just getting started in holistic health and performance, or you're looking to upskill, or you just want to stand out from the crowd, IMS1 is the advanced training you need. To get early notification of the course release and win a 10% discount at the launch, please go to the Chek Shop, that's CHEK Shop, thechekshop.com/IMS1 online. That's thechekshop.com/IMS1 online and sign up. I know you're going to love this program. I've got nothing but excellent feedback for the years I've been running it live, and it's super exciting to be able to share it with you online so you can learn at your own pace anytime, anywhere you have an internet connection. Enjoy. It seems to me that a couple of things are important. One of them is eating enough raw food to get enough enzymes in your body. I think a lot of people are really off on that. And, I really like kimchi and fermented food, sauerkraut, because of the concentration of the enzymes and the alteration of the nutrient profile. It makes foods much more nutritious when they're fermented. And fortunately now there's so many companies making nice kombuchas and a variety of different things. That's very helpful. I think everybody should be supplementing their diet with some kind of fermented food. And then, the enzymes, because they run all your chemical pathways, so you without adequate enzymes, the things you have to have in your body, as you know, in order to detoxify, you have to have enough nutrients to run your primary detoxification pathways, especially the conversion of fat-soluble to water-soluble toxins, because a lot of people, I think it's, if I remember, it's been years since I studied, I think it's either the P448 or P50 pathway in the liver that makes those conversions. But having done, countless functional medicine tests on people over the years with things like all sorts of heavy metal toxicity and stuff from can liners and plastics and asbestos and all the stuff that people don't realize that they're breathing in and coming in through contact, and chlorine and water. If you don't have the nutrition on board to run those pathways, it just shuttles it into the fat. And then when people go on diets and they start burning up that fat, then they're really stressing the hell out of their liver. In fact, I've seen reports over the years showing that people are actually sclerosing their liver by forcing themselves to have to metabolize fat that had toxins that the body did not have the resources to break down, because if it liberates the energy out of the fat to keep the body alive on these low-calorie diets, then the molecules that can't be converted into water-soluble molecules sit in the liver until the body can break them down, and it scars the liver. But the point being, it seems to me that we, need to have the nutrition, which goes back to diet. And unfortunately, a lot of the supplements out there, unlike you guys, a lot of them are just not very high quality. They've been sitting on the shelf a long time. They got a lot of chemical stabilizers and all sorts of crap in them. So by the time you get them, you're eating very dead, almost toxic stuff. So there's a lack of real high quality supplements out there. I mean, everybody's taking their Fred Flintstones vitamins and synthetic crap, but that's probably more stressful to the body than it is helpful. But if we get a good profile of nutrition and we're eating clean food and we have enough enzymes on board, then we can start detoxifying the body. So the point I'm driving at is there's a few factors, but you got to have the enzyme support, which means raw food and supplementation. I use your enzymes every day. I take 5 Masszymes. Actually, I take 5 Capex every morning, and I take 5 Masszymes before bed every night, unless my soul tells me otherwise. And I find that that's just, my body seems to want that. It just helps me, and I just listen and let it guide me. So my point is, I'm covering enzymes there, and I eat as much raw food as my body wants. And then once we can start cleaning ourselves out, what I find happens is that people get past all these restricted situations, because when you've got mercury in your body or nickel in your body or all these other things you can have in there, it disrupts the chemical pathways. It disrupts the nervous system's normal transmission. It causes neural entanglement. So the system goes into this sort of a state of like chaos, like someone threw a bomb in the middle of a football stadium and people are just running in every direction, killing each other. And then it seems to me that then we can get back to, we're out of a defense posture on the inside and more into the state that an animal would be in its natural environment. So then you can actually eat a lot of things that you couldn't eat before because your body was trying to protect itself, or it needed key elements from food. So you might find yourself needing a lot of leafy greens, for example, because you had a deficit you were trying to fill. I've just noticed in my life, I just finished, me and the girls usually do a parasite cleanse every 6 months or so. And we've been testing another detox protocol lately. So I did, in the last couple of months, we've all done a 60-day parasite protocol. And then we did a new homeopathic protocol that was actually very effective. I mean, we all felt it right away. And when I'm vaporizing tobacco, I notice that, man, the bag hits me a lot stronger than it used to when I'm on these detox protocols, because it's sensitizing my body by cleaning all the toxicity out of it. I'm just curious if you have anything to add to that, because it seems to me that if we don't get the nutrition variety and quality, and we don't get the enzyme quality, and we don't detox, and then we don't work on our mental emotional state, then we're always going to have these chronic problems with food intolerances, which are driven by a lot of stress. And we're constantly be reacting. Our immune systems are usually either going to be one of two things: overexcited because there's too much stress on them, or chronically fatigued.
Yeah, and I came to the same conclusions organically. Of course, we started the company almost 20 years ago after I had I was following a performance-based diet as advocated in the highest levels of the bodybuilding world. And I ran into that whole digestive meltdown after the Mr. Universe. I gained 42 pounds of fat and water. And then I was introduced into the concept of rebuilding my microbiome using enzymes and probiotics and raw food. I went on a raw food diet for 2 years.
Wow.
It took me 6 months to recapture my aesthetic self. But what happened at the end of that was, I have a whole wealth of vitality that I didn't have when I was competing at what the world accepted as the aesthetic idea. So we make that mistake of if someone looks a certain way or is performing in a certain way, we assume that, well, that's because of X, Y, Z. But that doesn't necessarily, to be fit or to be aesthetically pleasing on the cover of a magazine or in an Instagram live person doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy. And many of those people what was finding, and you've seen this for years, these high performing athletes who we all stare and wonder what they're able to do with their body. They're coming to you because they're breaking down at a certain point and they haven't separated the two. And I think the key element that I learned was it is how you convert and transmit that food, how the enzymatic system works, how the probiotic system works. And I did that myself when I started fasting. First 1 day at a time, then 3 days at a time, then up to 10 days. And I thought, well, what's the reason here? And I went, to your point, I'm freeing up the detoxification pathways. Well, then I went, well, what would happen if I started taking 100 enzymes a day? And literally, I would do it in a 2-to-1 ratio. If I took 100 enzymes, I'd be taking 50 probiotics, in that ratio. So it was 10. I always do it a half and half. Well, the results were I was able to produce better results on fasting. And I didn't have the negative side, which you talked about. When you're detoxing, you have this, emotional stress. You might be tired. You might not feel good. You might not be able to maintain your cognitive focus or capabilities. A lot of people will, rest and recover. And now I'm at a state where I can fast for days at a time. I feel no drop off. I still go to the gym and work out. I still do my cardio. I'm still doing my function. Like I'm fasting right now.
That's amazing.
And I have no drawback. What I do feel is I feel a calmness and a clarity that, you read about why mystics would do it. But these mystics that often illustrated these ideas were living in a pre-modern world that didn't have all these, challenge exactly to deal with. And so I always look at, so let's take the paleo philosophy, which I think is a great philosophy for looking at dietary aspects, getting local food, fresh food in a local environment that has, its full nutrient capabilities and, as you said, the enzyme and probiotic capabilities. Okay, well, you can transfer that onto a ketogenic diet. You can transfer that onto a plant-based diet. The underlying principles are the same. You're just adjusting for where your microbiome is at any given time. And I always say to people, I think I've been on a plant-based diet for 20 years. I think we're going on, we're at 22 years now. I'm absolutely confident I could switch to a paleo-style diet or a ketogenic diet, and I think my adjustment period would be no more than 30 days. I could adjust to it.
I would imagine it would be faster than that, actually. I've taken vegetarians who have been vegetarian their whole life, and some of them using your products have gotten them to where I start them off usually with bone broth and fish, white fish and fish stew, so that they're not eating too much flesh, but they're bringing in, the bone and the juices of the animal. And usually that conversion only takes about a week, so they ramp up their enzymes and their probiotic, the intestinal bacteria starts to adapt itself. And then usually within about a week to 2 weeks at most, they're able to start eating progressively more. So I say go from the lighter meat, so maybe some bird meat like chicken and some fish, and then start sneaking up slowly onto the heavier meats that you want to eat, and just start with an ounce or two and see how your body reacts, and just let it guide you from there. But I wouldn't doubt it if you could make a conversion like that in probably a couple of weeks.
It wouldn't surprise me. I always like to err to the side of caution and gradual integration for people who are listening, because they'll say, "Oh, well, Paul or Wade said this," and I want to lay down some tracks to make that transition smooth and easy, as opposed to a little bumpy, because I don't know what their state of health might be. I'm not doing an assessment, so I won't be responsible.
I'm of course speaking of you, but that's the philosophy of under promise and over deliver. It's always a better idea. Turmeric's really, really hot now. There's a lot of scientific research on it, but they're not all created the same. So I brought Autumn Smith on to tell you about Paleo Valley's turmeric complex, so you know exactly what the benefits are and why you, like me, should get your turmeric complex from Paleo Valley. Autumn, tell us about your turmeric complex.
At Paleo Valley, we are big believers in food as medicine. And so turmeric, of course, it has beat drugs out. We know it's anti-inflammatory. We know it has brain benefits. We know it has joint benefits. But what most people don't know is that a lot of turmeric supplements only contain one isolated compound of turmeric called curcumin. And so what we did instead was create a complex. We added organic turmeric and then ginger and rosemary and clove, which were some of the most DNA protective spices studied. And we created a complex. We added organic coconut powder and pepper for absorption. And so we've created a really high quality, highly bioavailable turmeric complex that will hopefully help you to feel your best. And all you have to do to check it out is go to paleovalley.com. That's PALEOVALLEY.com. And you can use the code CHEK15, that's lowercase CHEK 15, to save 15%.
I was going to talk to you about this later, but I think it's because we're talking about this and we're talking about the gut and the gut's so pivotal to a person's health in every single way, physically, emotionally, mentally, biochemically, and it's so heavily influenced by psychological stress. With the environment that we're in, it's very unstable. We're learning that almost nobody can be trusted, be they medical, be they political, be they legal, be they military, be they police. It's just like we've got this total kind of purging of the collective shadow of humanity right now. And, there's talk about crashing stock markets and blackouts with power and food shortages and I how much of it is just propaganda to scare the hell out of people to make them controllable and raise prices on things. I don't know, but it seems to me that regardless of what was going on in the world, people seem to have a tendency to generate a lot of stress for themselves, whether it be just in their spousal relationships or their a lot of people are not doing things that they love to do for a living, so they get up with dread and go to work and come home and have to, drink beer and smoke pot and watch mindless television just to kind of disengage from the reality of the choices they've made. I just wondered if you could share some of your thoughts on things that people can do right now with their mental, emotional self-management that would be an important enhancement. Because even if we're taking Bioptimizer supplements and we're detoxing and we're eating good food, if we're not managing ourselves mentally, emotionally, we can negate all of that quite easily just by stressing the shit out of ourselves.
Exactly. And
true. Bullseye.
One of the things that's, the double-edged sword of rapid technological innovation is, the doubling effect of technology.
Yeah.
Every 18 months, which has been pretty standard since the 1940s or 50s. And that's staying on pace. And so we have a tremendous amount of input into the system, but our nervous system isn't adjusting at the same speed.
No.
And so, if you take martial arts, I'll give you a great thing. I was training on the weekend with some special forces, and these are highly trained individuals in the most extremely stressful environments. Well, it's beyond what you can imagine.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. And what's fascinating is and you've gone through a lot of that training, so you understand this, but you're teaching your body to be able to follow whatever training that you have in order to survive under the most extremely stressful situations, that you're not having to make a decision. And what happens if you don't have that embedded into your nervous system, you experience stress and then you freeze. You're not capable of managing that environment. And it's no different for the production of the vital essences of living well is the same thing. So we have an exponential increase in environmental toxins, life force disruptors, technological innovation, which is putting input, puts in the stress. So a person says, well, I want to fast, or I want to take care of my diet, but I can't handle my work, or I don't know what, they're teaching my kids at school, and I can see my kids going off, and it's creating all this stress. And it's really because of living in a way that doesn't support humanity. And I'm not an anti-technologist, and I want to be clear about that. What I'm saying is we have to understand the power that we've been given, and there is a responsibility that comes with that. And we haven't taught the responsibility side of that equation very well.
Yeah, nor have the scientists and the researchers and technologists develop it. They've lost their connection to ethics and morals as well, because they couldn't, I've talked about this before, but you watch the documentary Social Dilemma on Netflix, and every one of the prime guys that invented social media will not let their own children use it, state very clearly they created a dragon that they don't know how to get back into the bottle, and they said that the problem is nobody, including Google, knows what the truth is anymore, because you've got all this spinning of everything to use it as mind control. And so like the layers and layers and layers of deception and manipulation, and almost every one of these platforms has really got one mission, and that's to put as much money as possible in the pockets of the shareholders. And point being is that, when you look at things like 5G, you look at the use of chemicals for food, chemicals for soil. We look at people like Bill Gates spraying aluminum and chalk dust in the sky to try to decrease the Earth's temperature instead of dealing with the real problem. And so aluminum is one of the most toxic things you can put in your body. So now they're just covering cities with it using chemtrails. My point is simply that, and then you look at the military-industrial complex, my God, that is just a dark child gone completely and utterly out of control. I don't know if you've seen the new documentary, Above Top Secret 2022.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's worth watching. It'll definitely peel some eyelids open. It shows you just how out of control the military-industrial complex, and how even the CIA and the president has no control over it. They're actually under its control, and how trillions of dollars just go missing from the budget into all these black ops secret programs that are coming right out of yours and my pocket. And then if you look at the absolute horseshit with so-called science and vaccines and drugs, that's just off the Richter scale. So the point being is that we've got a worldwide situation where the application of science has completely lost its morality and its ethics. And the only thing is who can make the most money, and there's no concern for the knock-on effect to human beings or the environment whatsoever. And I think that's really we can do all sorts of strategies to protect ourselves, whether it be meditation, any number of mental, emotional self-management strategies. But we're at the point now where if we don't all start getting involved and really spending the time to do some research and read books like Arthur Firstenberg's book, The Invisible Rainbow, and look at books. All the way back in 1961, the year I was born, Rachel Carlson, I wrote the book, I think it's titled Silent Spring. I've got it in my life. Yes, Silent Spring, which was a devastating piece of work at the time, but it's gotten a million times worse since then. The point is we've all got to start waking up to what's really going on, because we are funding it. We just don't realize we're funding it. Otherwise, we're just going to be continually trying to meditate and defend ourselves against the same strategies that we're funding, and the same people we keep falling into the trap of funding through social media and voting for the people that look good but are the better choice of the devils that we have to choose from, which is all corporately controlled. And I don't know, what's your thoughts on that whole Mexican finger trap?
Well, I think I think a lot of people start out with good intentions. They get caught within the machine, and oftentimes they get compromised. And then once they've been compromised in whatever the weakness might be, and we all have our flaws, we all have our dark side, we all have our aspects, then they can be coerced into following different ideologies. And then they have a choice. They either opt out because they feel they're going down a path, or they begin to collude until eventually they're completely corrupted and they don't know who they are, where they come from, or what for, and they're really just doing the best they can to survive within a machine that is not supportive of life. And it's one of the reasons I've been a big advocate of two different ideologies. One that came up by Dr. David Hawkins, which is power versus force.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Force always requires a tremendous amount of energy. It takes energy.
Yeah.
Where power is within itself. It produces energy. It's sustainable. And you can break that down in the system into anabolic systems and catabolic systems. And they're both required as part of life. But if you go too far on one side, if you get too far anabolic, well, now you have cancer. If you're too far catabolic, well, now you have some degenerative condition that will take you out. So what is the balance between those? And I think ancient Ayurvedic science that came with Raja Yoga path. So there were various disciplines, but the Raja Yoga path was, okay, not only am I going to meditate, but I'm also going to do right action, good works.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. It wasn't good enough to sit up on the mountain and not participate in society. It's to sit up in the mountain until I got enough,
clarity
that I could actually act in a way and maintain my ethical integrity in a very dysfunctional force-based system.
Yeah.
And to have the emotional and psychological capacity, wherewithal to move forward under extremely challenging circumstances, which we find ourselves today. I don't fault medical doctors. There's so many medical doctors that privately hold beliefs and will practice within their own lives, but they're caught within the economic system. And one of our good friends is a doctor. I won't mention his name at this point. We chatted about, here's a noble person that has dedicated his intellectual capability, his heart center into dealing with the world as a medical doctor, and was forced to leave the profession out of an ethical reason. He's a student of yours,
mm-hmm.
and is doing great work in the face of overt levels of evil. And evil, of course, is merely ignorance. And ignorance can be amplified with technology. And now we have so much pervasive ignorance, and it's being amplified and distributed. We have massively distributed ignorance in a way that's never before been seen on the planet.
And it's pawned off as science or as wisdom or as the only way, or if you don't do this, then you're the bad guy or you're the one making us sick.
Right. Now it's the inversion of truth.
Yeah.
Which is, if you don't follow the authoritarian dictates, then not only are you a rebel, but you are actually the problem.
You're a terrorist.
Correct. And under that, the institutional, or let's say canonized documentation of our rights and freedoms that guarantee the support and safety and growth of a society can now be suspended under these emergency acts or under these sort of things. And, being from Canada, I was subjected to that situation, as are many of my friends who are still living in that situation. And so, ignorant people with extreme levels of power can do a lot of damage through force dynamics, but it's not real power. And that's why, as challenging and as frustrating and as emotionally distressful as the world is, we have to go back to, the first thing I need to do is identify the conflict within myself, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, however you want to classify it, and then systematically remove those things so that one can stand in the face of adversity, like one of those guys I was training in an extremely challenging environment, not only survive, but actually thrive. And the good news is truth is also being distributed exponentially. Your podcast is a great example of that. That's emerged over the last, few years since you started, using that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, although we're up in, you're living as the mountain philosopher, if you will, the wisdom that's been cultivated over the course of your life by going through this and has allowed you to distribute what you've learned over decades, which people wouldn't have access to. So it's both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
And we're playing a little small role in that part to say, hey, we've got some solutions to help you get your physiology in the right place that allows you to get detox, to clarify, to enhance your vitality, which will lead to clarity in one's spiritual self, one's choice, one's mental and physiological and psychological well-being. And that will bring forth, I think, a wonderful new planet. I don't know what the timeline is. I don't know when that is.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be in that little stream to the best of my ability and trying to remove the darkness within myself. I'm not a perfected being or anything like that. I don't want to advocate. I'm not some holier than thou guy, but I do advocate self-discovery, self-experimentation, and the advocation of abundant life and vitality as all the noble emotions that we feel, like kindness and love and the willingness to endure temporary discomfort for a greater goal, which is the foundational principles of any type of noble life worth leading.
Many of you are aware of the importance of magnesium, but very few are aware that most of the magnesium products out there are not high quality and seldom do what they say they'll do on the bottle or the package. But Bioptimizers has produced the most comprehensive magnesium breakthrough product on the market. I've got Wade here to tell us a little bit about it. Wade, what makes your magnesium breakthrough product so unique?
Well, I think because we combine a variety of magnesiums. In fact, we use 7 different types. So if you look at all the research papers out there, you'll see that they'll use various magnesiums, whether it's orotate, malate, sucrosomial is a hot one that's just come out recently, and they're rated on bioavailability. But the biggest component that a lot of people don't understand with magnesium is that different types of magnesium are uptaken by different parts of the body or different organs, some in your brain, some in your nervous system, some are vasodilators. And so there's a variance in people's responses depending on what they need magnesium for. So we went out to try and solve this problem by combining all 7 of the best magnesiums into one single capsule, which was very difficult because, number one, the bonding size was different. The nozzles for the machines wouldn't work. We don't use any fillers or chemical excipients, that's the flow regulators. And then we got them in the caps, and the caps rose. We had to do specialized caps. But when we solved all those problems and turned it out for ourselves, because we were tired of buying, I had a whole counter full of magnesiums. Well, guess what? A lot of people said this was the best magnesium product they've ever taken. And after being in this business for 18 years, it's quickly moved to our number 1 selling product in Bioptimizer history.
What are just 2 or 3 things that magnesium is really supportive of? I know sleep challenges is one of them. What are some of the other key issues?
Well, it acts as a down regulator for your nervous system to kind of help you relax and go into, out of fight or flight. And that's the biggest factor, especially today in a high blue light, electromagnetic frequency world that we find ourselves in, a high stimulus environment. It's also critical for vasodilation. And vasodilation increases blood flow. And many times when we are suffering from a variety of pain or conditions in the body, it's because we're not getting oxygen in or toxins out of those tissues. And you've written a lot about it in your work. And so magnesium breakthrough, because it's so powerful and not available in North American diets because of what we've done with farming, it's a great way to augment your diet. And it's easy to get. You go to magnesiumbreakthrough.com or magbreakthrough.com/living4D. You can get a 10% discount, and it's a money back guarantee. If it's not the best magnesium you've ever taken, you get your money back.
MAG breakthrough.com, magbreakthrough.com/living4D. And is there a discount for the listeners?
10%
all
for
right.
all the listeners.
All right, give it a go, you guys. Everything I use from Bioptimizers is the best I've ever used. That's why I love Wade and Bioptimizers. So you've heard how it's made, why it's made, and how it works. If you want the best, go get it. I don't think anyone needs to be a noble, perfected being. I think the real deficit in the world today is common sense. I mean, I think you don't have to be really smart to say, geez, what happens if I poison the food I'm eating? Well, if you asked a child that, they would say you'll probably get sick. But here we go, people keep going to the stores in droves and buying stuff with Roundup on it that just wipes out your microbiome and causes cancer. And you've got, the list is so long. I mean, last time I looked, I got a book that says there's over 150,000 dangerous chemicals put in food, and other studies I've seen say 68,000. But the reality of it is, it doesn't matter if it's 68,000 or 150,000. If there's that much chemicals in food that are bad for the body, you're pretty much screwed no matter which way you go, unless you go to an organic farm. And then you've got the fact that it's moving around in the jet stream. It's coming in the rain. So a lot of people say, well, why buy organic food? Because it's got all these chemicals that are coming in from these other sources. And I go, well, it's a scale of toxicity, right?
Yes.
The organic farms are the real ones are doing the best they can do. So you're minimizing the damage and you're supporting the soil and the earth by putting money into those people. So it's just amazing to me how many people talk themselves out of the best option. What am I really saying? I think we have a serious, not a deficit, a crisis of common sense in the world.
Well, yeah, I think it was Thomas Paine, wasn't he wrote the book Common Sense, back so many years ago.
I don't know.
And it was one of the instruments, I think, that was a foundational aspect of the American Constitution, which is a very noble document. And I think a lot of people don't read it properly. It was an aspirational society. It didn't say that they got there, and you're either moving towards an aspirational side or you're descending into a society that's guaranteed to collapse. And that seems to be the pattern within humanity. So there's some sort of overarching cycle that I think we're right in the midst of. And it's what's the old Chinese proverb? It was a curse, I think. May you live in interesting times. Well, interesting times are chaotic, and so I'm here to advocate for people. Is like, I understand your life is chaotic. I understand that you feel that you might not be able to follow the principles to the letter that you would like to, but start where you are. Start moving in the direction. Start adding the elements that will allow you to produce greater vitality and health. Where now when you sit in meditation, you're able to get 2 minutes of clarity, 3 minutes of clarity. If you take someone to the gym, you don't put them under a 500-pound squat the first day.
No, not unless you want to kill them.
Yeah, it's progressive resistance training, or any type of training is developed progressively. And it's the same thing with your health and biology. These are the natural evolutionary cycles. Everybody wants everything today or yesterday. And I think with such instant access and the convenience of ignorance. Ignorance has become convenient, both individually and collectively with the groups that we're, associated with. So choose the people you associate with wisely.
Yeah.
Do your best to become the best healthy person. The Living 4D Principles is a great example of that. And then from there, your selection of choice becomes easier and easier to make, and these things start to reveal. And you go through a phase, I think, of which can be very negative, where you start to wake up a little bit, and there's almost a sense of hopelessness, like, wow, this is way worse than we thought. And your groups close to you will often start to change because you find yourself arguing points that with your friends or your family members, and it can be very frustrating. And I would suggest that's part of the expectation to understand. And you don't change people by, browbeating them into whatever. And that's the thing, I think, where these authoritarian systems with governments who have the monopoly on violence.
Yeah.
Okay. Those will eventually collapse, and they're collapsing around us. And that can be obviously concerning for someone trying to run their life or run their family or, maintain health and vitality. It's just, you got to You got to adapt. And I'm choosing now to see all of these life force disruptors, shall we say. I believe that they are actually the instruments of evolutionary change, and that ultimately we will develop a greater sense of awareness and understanding of how to symbiotically use both technology and the natural evolution in a cohesive way instead of a corrupted way. And that doesn't mean it isn't going to get a little rough out there,
No.
but we incarnated here at this time. So, hey, life's fatal. So you might as well go all in, because one thing for sure, the outdoor is coming for everyone, and it's not necessarily when you die or how you die. It's more importantly of how you live and finding meaning within what you're doing.
Yeah, and making a contribution, and just, I think living it, I like to see it as a play or a drama or a game, that we're all playing, the game of life or the dance of life or the drama of life or the play of life, that's all equally valid. And the reality of it is even before the pandemic, people were facing crisis of health. The rates of disease are extremely high, childhood illnesses, people with psychological disorders taking medical drugs for psychological problems. The rate of suicide in groups has been progressively rising through the age groups. So we're always in the jaws of life, the forces of life. I mean, I think I was telling you, my dog, the squirrels keep trying to dig underneath the chicken house to get in and eat all the chicken food, and my dog loves to watch that chicken coop. And I walked out there to feed the chickens the other day, and there was a dead squirrel, and I picked it up to take it to the compost, and I picked it up, and it was a mother, and she had rows of full breasts, so I'm like, oh, poor little thing. I mean, geez, now there's going to be a bunch of little babies that don't get to eat. And so the sort of the, I don't know what you'd call it in me, the child, the nature lover, felt really sad. I mean, I would have been happier if it was a male, because then the babies would go, but I shouldn't. I told Penny, and she goes, well, good, because these guys eat up our vegetables and they eat up our fruit, and, we can only feed so many creatures. So it's just, my point being is, life eats life.
Yes.
And without death, life cannot move forward. And, as emotional as I felt for a minute there over the squirrel, I'm eating fish that had to be killed. I'm eating, animals that had to be killed. And so
plants have a nervous system as well.
Yes, they do.
So, I one of my, a lot of people will say, well, Wade, what did you take on a plant-based diet for spiritual reasons? And I was like, no, it was an experiment that worked out for me, really. And yes, there's always a spiritual intention behind everything I do, and I err as same as everyone else. But I said, I'm not a vigilante vegan or something that is condemning other people for the killing of life, because J.C. Bose at around the turn of the century in the early 1900s.
1908, I think. I've got his books in my library.
He used the crescograph to actually show that plants have a nervous system. They have a circulatory system. They feel emotion. And so, therefore, I can't say that someone else is doing wrong or doing harm by, eating an animal or something like that. I don't have an opinion about it, as far as, do what feels right for you. But I do believe that the First Nations culture, the native cultures, one of the reasons that you gave grace, or you gave homage to the spirit of the animal, is that it had become part of you, and it was an honor both for the animal and yourself. And I think that's the whole point of grace.
That is the point of grace.
Is to give thanks and to give gratitude for that which gave its life in order to sustain this one. And ideally, that's an evolutionary hierarchy that moves up the chain. And so
It's also the foundation of morality in many ways, because, a moral by definition is a code of conduct that's life affirmative. So Indians and most natives that I know of didn't just go out and say, let's see how many buffalo we can kill today and leave them laying there to rot like white men did. And they hunt. When they would hunt, they would connect to the spirit of the animal. They would ask to be guided, and they would specifically take out the weak, if there was an animal that was weak, or the older animals, so that it didn't disable the pack or the flock or whatever they were working with. But the point is that when we understand that life feeds on life, we also understand that if we overconsume, then we kill life. If we underconsume, then we kill ourselves. So I think that the practice of sacred relationship with plants, animals, the land, and to many natives, the earth is a living being, the trees are beings, everything is a being. That's that's the basis of animism, which is believing that everything's animated by the one great spirit, which I think is a very healthy philosophy that's gotten swept under the carpet with, because once monism came along and deism, then everybody projected God as out there, not here. So God's up there and evil's down here, and we all want to get out of here to get up there. And so the next thing you know, we started losing touch with the sacred practices and the worship and the respect that allowed life to be in a symbiotic relationship. And I think if anything, what's going on in the world right now is going to push us right back to that, because we can't really, I've studied this long enough to know, and I can see enough indicators, the handwriting's on the wall. We got limited days before we tip the scales, where Mother Nature cannot recover from the level of extraction that we are using, because we're throwing away massive piles of food, we're over-consuming food, we're poisoning the land, we're poisoning the animals, we're raising animals in inhumane conditions. And even if plants are conscious, which I know they are, I talk to them all the time, we're even being inhumane to them. I mean, imagine if someone came by every day and sprayed you with some Roundup just to make sure that you turned out exactly the way they wanted you to, and gave you chemicals in your food to make you grow faster so they could cut your head off a little quicker,
Well, they are doing that.
Well, I know. Isn't that a paradox?
It is a paradox.
I mean, that right there goes right back to my common sense comment. Like, it's the paradox is that people are allowing that to happen. And people like me and you, we're careful about what we eat. I'm very careful about what my kids eat. In fact, Angie just took the kids yesterday to Legoland for a little day out and fun. And there's this little place that they go to that has organic beef burgers. And they were eating their burger, and there was something inside the meat. And they're like, what is this? And so she went, and they immediately noticed this is not an organic beef burger. So she went and said to the manager, what the hell is this? It was fake meat. They started putting fake meat inside the burgers, and they didn't tell anybody. And all these people in the line thinking they were going to get organic burgers, and it gave Mana a stomach ache and made him feel really bad because he'd eaten half of it by the time they figured out what was going on. And so Angie had quite a little heated conversation, and she said that there was the place was packed full, and there was a line of people out the door trying to get into this place because it's real popular, because they all think they're getting organic burger. But when she showed people in line, she said, look at this. Showed them how they had tucked this shit inside the thing so you couldn't even tell it was hidden in there. Everybody just got pissed off and left. And the guy says, please don't talk out loud about this. But this is the kind of horse shit that keeps going on. I'm like, these people are putting Bill Gates crap. And then it was funny because Angie showed me a picture of Bill Gates yesterday that she grabbed off the internet, and he has just got a huge swollen gut. I mean, and you can see that he's got like a beer belly on him, which is classic inflammation response. And I'm like, she goes, look, this is what happens when he eats his own food. And this is what we're doing to people. But the whole thing that I'm bringing up is just the disgusting trickery that's being used. I mean, something like that, when people think they're actually getting an organic beef burger or a high-quality meal, only to find out that somebody's sliding something else in there, which is some factory-raised crap that produces pesticides in its own body, or God knows what the hell was in there, but it made Mana feel really bad.
And all of us have these aha moments, and and it's up to us to find ways to adapt to probably a non-life supporting environment which we are finding ourselves in. So hopefully we're just going back to factory settings here on planet Earth.
Yeah.
I think they're talking about the Great Reset or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe that's going on, but maybe the joke's going to be on those who are advocating for it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a greater reset than they think. Last time I checked, although these people might control humanity, they don't control the galaxy.
No, exactly.
So let's not.
Let's invite some galactic wisdom on board.
Yeah. So I think the challenge is to be able to be aware of these things, but not get swept up in the hopelessness of it, but to take one's own action. And that's what we're here to do. That's why we have a relationship with Birch University to discover these things, to support people. That's why we advocate on our podcast and with our education courses. And that's why we go out and try and find the smartest people we can who have solved some of these problems and bring that in a easily usable form for people to make a difference in their lives. And it's a great journey.
Symbiotica makes an amazing product called Liposomal B12. I love it. It tastes great. It's very effective. But I am not the technical engineer behind the genius of the product, and the man that is sitting right here. So, Shervin, tell us what is unique about Liposomal B12 and why should people consider using it?
Well, I'd like to call it a much longer name, but in the
I'm sure you could.
Yeah, but at the scope of having to label something, it's called liposomal B12. But in actuality, it's liposomal methylcobalamin and liposomal adenosylcobalamin, which are two forms of B12 that are readily usable by the body in terms of cellular energy and methylation. We also have L-methylfolate in there and vitamin B6 pyridoxine in combination with fulvic minerals, which actually push the vitamins to do their job. And, a lot of people talk about B12 being an energy producer,
right,
but it's not a stimulant. What it does is it cleans up the cell, allows the cell to properly methylate, which means cleansing the cell, which ultimately, when you cleanse the cell, you get more energy. So this formula, it being in liposomal form, is probably all of my top athletes' favorite product. And I use it every single day. And another thing that just really quick jump on is we have this whole thing with MTHFR gene mutation.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that everyone now is getting tested on. A lot of children are considered to be on the spectrum when the whole time they weren't properly methylating.
Right.
This is, fuel for that fire of the methylation process. That's specifically what this product is. This is a methylator.
Which means what to the layman?
Which means that it allows the body to recognize which cells need to be cleansed, which cells need to have programmed death, apoptosis, helps the body go into autophagy. All of the things regarding macrophages and cellular cleanup and all that stuff, you need this nutrient in these forms to have a very cohesive system.
And today we need clean cells. And it actually works very fast as well. I mean, when I squirt it in my mouth, I can feel it happening quickly.
It's almost immediately. And just like any other Symbiotica product, there's no additives, there's no fillers. We've really upgraded the original product to where we're at today. And if you're listening to this, you're going to be getting the new version of this, which is just through the roof. It tastes delicious. It's awesome. It's in our Myron glass bottle, so it's blocked from ultraviolet light. This stuff is, it's the best ever.
Yeah, awesome. So if you want to get the world's greatest liposomal B12, go to Symbiotica.com, Symbiotika.com, and use the code CHEK15 on checkout. You won't be disappointed. Wade, this is all really important and pertinent stuff we're talking about. I think one of the things I want to loop back to is it can be a bit overwhelming for people, because if you start reading magazines or talking to health experts, one of the things I always have to work with my holistic lifestyle coaching students on is to be careful not to give somebody such a long list of supplements and detoxes, because it can be so expensive and overwhelming, and good quality products are, for a lot of people, I mean, you and I are successful men that have worked hard and make a good living, so we can afford to buy the things that we want to buy to take care of ourselves. But a lot of people are living pretty tight. Now, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, spend money on a lot of stuff that isn't helping them, And I've had many patients tell me they can't afford organic food. And I say, okay, I want you to start writing down everything you're eating, drinking, and buying. And they come back and I see, well, you're spending $15 a day on coffee at Starbucks. So that you add that up for a week, and that becomes a fair bit of money a month. And then you're buying all this junk food. And so I show them, usually they're spending several $100s on stuff that's poisoning the very body that they're trying to clean out. And if they just cut back on that and invest it in things that help, that helps. But I think the point I wanted to see what your thoughts on are, I mean, I certainly have thoughts on this, but I'd like to hear yours, and is, what would you say to the average person if you're on a low budget and you want to start making some positive changes due to everything we've talked about? What do you think's the most important things to do first?
Well, I outline it in the course that we give away on our site. It's called the Awesome Health Course. And the first 3 non-negotiables, it's the awesome formula. Air, water, exercise are the first 3 aspects.
Yeah, and they're all free.
They're all free. So if you just got those things sorted out, then the rest comes, which is S, which stands for sunlight. And that is the source of all things here on this planet.
Yeah, no sunlight, no life.
So embracing that. And then we go to what are the optimizers? And the optimizers are enzymes and probiotics, which support the diet that you're following, essential minerals, essential vitamins, essential fatty acids, and then the various herbs, which kind of move electrical force energies inside the body, whether it's detoxification or transferring from one system to another system, on kind of like a Chinese or Ayurvedic philosophy. And then you get into mental beliefs and attitudes.
Yeah.
Do you have an aspirational hierarchy that you are aspiring to as a spiritual being having a physical experience?
Yeah.
And how that brings, if you're disharmonious or you're stressed out or you have anxiety, that's a feedback loop saying that you need to sort out some things in your life. And then finally, how do you navigate that? And I call that's the E, or the etc. Education, testing, and coaching. Education coming from to educe, to learn from within by running tests in your own life. And then the fastest way to cut the curve is to get someone who's been there, done that can help you navigate through what's the next best selection for you based on where you are in your current state of health and well-being. That's where coaching comes in. And I mean, that's the whole, Paul Chek for living 4D philosophy of not only are you teaching the principles, but you're teaching how to coach other people who may be coming from a different background or a different situation, and to see what are the big movers in that person's life, where they are at any given moment. And it's interesting that we both come to the same conclusions. But I would say, now through technology like SpectraCells and Dutch analysis and genetics and epigenetics, for a few $1,000 of testing, you can get some really great data on yourself. What are your risk factors? What things will de-risk that, so you don't turn on the epigenetic switch that would cause, the cessation of your life or the advocate or the development of dis-ease. And one of the things in North America to go with is, I think, magnesium, particularly in the North American life, is probably our biggest key element. And what's interesting, to go back to where we started the podcast, when we started testing the different types of magnesium on the microbiome, the microbiome responded to different mediums, and it turned out that our product Magnesium Breakthrough actually turned out in the podcast, or not just as a podcast thing, but in the science lab, when you're doing an HPLC machine shows that, hey, guess what? These probiotics that are supportive of life will now produce different sets of antioxidants. They will bring forth a variety of nutrients, neurochemicals that enhance mental well-being, and it's across the board. And it's so many people have given us fantastic testimonials. They said, well, I don't know what happened. I just started taking a little bit of this magnesium, and suddenly I don't feel stressed out when I have caffeine, or I feel that I'm more capable to handle the stress of life. And I always say, try it. And if it doesn't make a big difference, we just give you your money back. And that's, I think, a philosophy that everybody can advocate for. And, I know that you curate the companies that are on your podcast. And I think almost all of the companies that are on your podcast, I actually use their products. So I'm not against any other company that's doing great work. And I think this podcast is probably one of the best curated podcasts on products that work and by reputable, ethical people who are producing something for the advocation of health and vitality. And it's an honor to be part of your podcast and to be here and share time and share space with you. I can't tell you, when I was an aspirational young boy up in Canada training in my barn, I envisioned one day that I would get these kind of opportunities, and as you would say, great spirit brought us together, and that's a beautiful thing.
It is. You brought up a point, and I think one of the most important questions anybody can ask themselves that doesn't require any coaching or fancy doctors or tests or anything. It's just an honesty question. And I tell my students all the time, you're drinking a bunch of coffee. You're not feeling very well. Ask yourself this question before you drink the coffee. Is it working? Is it enhancing your life? A little coffee can be magical. I like my 1 shot of espresso a day, but if I drink more than that, it stops working for me. It actually causes more stress than it gives me freedom, support, or reward. If we just look at how we're relating to ourself, if we're stressing ourselves out with a bunch of negative thoughts, feelings, emotions, judgments of self or other, we can say, is that working? Is it giving me more freedom? Is it bringing me more capacity to love and to engage and contribute to life? And if the answer is no, then you just stop doing it. You say, I got to find a way to manage this, which my new book gets into all that very deeply, and I teach that in my holistic lifestyle coaching program, because you have to know that to guide others. You can't guide anybody beyond where you've taken yourself. You can just get lost with people and charge them for it. But really, the key question is it working? Is our political system working? Is the medical system working? Are vaccinations working? Are medical drugs working? And if they work, when do they work? And when, look at antibiotics. Antibiotics, like you said, right in the very beginning, they've saved a lot of lives, but now they're destroying life. Why? Because we took it too far.
Correct.
What was meant to be a tool turned out to be a crutch, right?
Yes.
And then now you're limping, but you can walk if you just put the crutch down and eat some real food and use some fermented foods and take quality supplements. Then you don't need to have antibiotic resistance and end up in a hospital with tubes hanging out of your body thinking you're going to die any minute, because you might. So I think just that one simple question, just be real honest. Look at how you're handling your physical body. Are you over-exercising? Is it working? Are you under-exercising? Is it working? Too much sex? Is it working? Is it enhancing the connection in the relationship? Well, if it's too much sex, the answer is no. Now you're turning your partner into an object, and you're just masturbating with someone else's body. That never really grows deeper connection, love, or grows our spiritual development. People are going crazy with plant medicines and getting themselves into a lot of trouble. And I say, how's that working for you so far? Right? Because if you're taking a pile of mushrooms, but you're not making the world a better place, now you're just wasting mushrooms. And that's a sacred trespass, in my opinion. If you're on a diet, sometimes diets work. I mean, I remember when the 40-30-30 zone diet was a big thing, and I had people telling me that it was a miracle. And I say, good, it's a miracle till it's not. Just make sure that when it starts not being a miracle, that you say, what is my body wanting? And start experimenting. Be your own scientist. Be your own laboratory. Pay close attention. Your body's always giving you your report card, And then I think, of course, as always, there's 4 doctors. We're responsible for our happiness. We're responsible for getting adequate movement to keep baseline health. We're responsible for eating real food, and we're responsible for giving ourselves enough rest and introspection. And if the way we've chosen to live and spend our money is such that we have to work so much that we can't rest, then we start burning out and life loses its value, and then we start getting caught in negative thinking, and then next thing you know, we're getting prescribed drugs, and then we're getting further and further out of touch with ourselves, and that's not working. So there's no escaping that. The formula that I developed to coach my clients many years ago that I'll share because it's very simple and very effective is my 1-4-100 formula. So the way I teach my patients and my clients is say, look, there's 4 doctors. You can't escape them. Ignorance in any one of these 4 areas will cost you. It'll bite you and make you miserable. So choose any one way you can improve your happiness, improve the way you exercise your body, improve the way you feed yourself, and improve the way you rest. And just choose one of those 4 doctors. And if you improve that doctor 1% a day for 100 days, you will have a 100% improvement in your inner experience of yourself and your experience of life. And I've never had a single patient, no matter how burnt out, tired, or sick, tell me that they couldn't handle a 1% improvement a day. And it just comes down to being honest. If you did 33 push-ups yesterday on your next workout, if you get 1 more, that's more than 1%. And none of us are too weak to get 1 more. If you had 3 cups of coffee yesterday, then just drink a little bit less. And the next time, be honest with yourself. Say, okay, I got to go a little less. Even if you have to take a felt pen or a Sharpie and put a marker on your cup and say, okay, that's as far as I go on this 3rd cup. And then the next thing you know, I'm down to 2 and I'm feeling fine. It's just really about participating and saying, I'm going to actually be honestly engaged in my life instead of renting myself to doctors and therapists to fix my problems so I can go home and keep doing the same shit that brought me there in the first place. And then the other thing, too, is I think the world has gotten so complicated and people's lives have gotten so complicated. I tell people, look, do what you can do to keep it simple. An example of simple is if you've got a lot of problems and you're reactive to foods, then one of the best things you can do is just cut it down to 2 vegetables and 1 meat source. That way, if your body reacts to it, you know it's one of those 3 things. But if you're eating casseroles and pizzas and you're eating chicken for breakfast and salmon for lunch and steak for dinner, you're just being overwhelmed with the genetics of so many different sources. You don't know what the hell is going on. So, keep your life simple and be honest about relationships. If there's relationships that are not nourishing you, then disengage from them. Or you keep yourself in a state of feeling like you're losing time to be with yourself. And most people have hardly any time to be with themselves because they're so engaged in things that aren't really important. But they're habitually just acting out their parental role models or doing what everybody else is doing. Arnold Mandel says a culture is a bunch of people doing the same things. Well, if your culture is sick, then maybe you should simplify your life, because by simplifying your life, you start to be able to actually pay attention to what happens when you do or don't meditate, or do or don't do some kind of work in practice, or do or don't drink enough water, or do or don't get enough exercise. So in a nutshell, ask yourself, is it working? Pay attention to happiness, movement, diet, and quiet. Make a 1% improvement on something a day. Be honest with yourself. Choose any one of those things and say, for 100 days, I'm going to improve myself 1%. And Dr. Happiness, it could be as simple as this. Find something that's worth laughing about. And then the next day, find something that's worth laughing about twice. And the next day, find something that's worth laughing about twice, and then find a good joke. Buy a book of jokes. I've got a whole huge book of jokes I bought in the Osho library. They got, he used to tell a lot of jokes when he would give lectures, and someone compiled all the jokes. So I've got like 700 pages of jokes. read a joke a day and give yourself permission to laugh, And so it doesn't have to be hard, but if we just say, okay, what's my dream for myself? And how do I start simplifying my life? And how do I start being honest about what I'm putting into my life, be it into my mind, into my emotions, into my body, and hold the compass bearing on freedom and vitality and having enough resource in you to really contribute something to the world. And I think the other thing that's important to realize is every single step we take, we're modeling that to other people. And then 6 months down the road, they look at us and they go, my God, you've lost a lot of weight, or more, you seem more happy than I've ever seen you. And then they get interested because they actually see the evidence. Now it's not just theory, it's actually tangible, empirical evidence. I think that we're at a place now where the world's changing so fast, we don't know what's coming tomorrow, and the best way to be prepared is to take care of yourself today, because anytime there's a crisis in a family or a crisis at work or a crisis with finances, if you don't have the resources to sit down and think clearly, then you really do have a bigger crisis. But if you realize that if you love your family, you love your friends, and you love life, then managing yourself effectively enough to be vital enough to really be a support to others is an honest commitment to life. And I think if we just start there, we might actually be okay.
Yeah, to summarize, I would say what you're advocating is self-discipline. Self-discipline leads to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom leads to happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start getting momentum on that level, happiness becomes joy. And joy to me is the natural effervescent expansion of when one is filled up with one's own happiness. It bubbles up and is distributed. And it's one of the reasons when we're around small children who aren't overly mentally oriented, you put with the crustiest, most unhappy people, you bring a couple of kids in there running around and stimulate them long enough, well, they'll crack open just about anybody because they are in that natural divine state, which is joy. And so oftentimes children can lead us to our own awareness. And I think that's the beauty of life. And we're the product of if you look here on this planet, we are the successful line of biological organisms distributed through billions of years that have come right to you. So when
to your door.
when people look at the world and say, well, I don't know what to do and I can't fix this and I can't do this, I think it's important to remind us that you are the product of organisms overcoming challenging environments successfully for billions of years. You are made up of the collection of those right choices, and they're accessible if you go within to find them. And when you go within, they naturally start to come out. And that is a noble way to see one's challenges in life and what they might be experiencing. And so my heart goes out to all the people that might be feeling challenged. But those challenges is what stimulates the evolutionary response. And I think that's what we're here to do right now. And we're in a big evolutionary shift. We can't avoid it. It's innate with physical existence. And why not embrace it and evolve to the best place that you can? Don't take a rigid position. Be willing to change one's thoughts, one's opinions, one's methodology, to embrace other people of different opinions, because chances are they have something that is exactly what you need at that moment. And hopefully we've provided a little bit for your listeners today to invoke that evolutionary response that is innate within them. And to that, I think we can, that's the foundation of our ideas in the company, to take people from sick to superhuman, to share people the principles, the products, the systems that allowed myself to overcome extreme challenges, and the people within our company and our clients and our friends around the world who are advocating it, such as yourself, to help people make a difference and embrace the successful aspect of our evolutionary and divine nature, and that's a beautiful thing.
Hi, everybody. I sure hope you're enjoying the podcast today. You know, it's said that most people are either in too much of a rush to prepare fresh organic greens, be they vegetables or green fruits like fresh green apples, and end up grazing on inferior foods. But it comes with a cost. Nutrient depletion, reduced capacity to handle stress, reduced immune resilience, and you age more rapidly. But Organifi comes to our aid again with an amazingly tasty, nutritious addition, their new crispy apple green juice. But it's more than just another apple drink. It's packed with your favorite adaptogens and superfoods. Some key features of Organifi's new crisp apple green juice are delicious taste from organic crisp apples, organic whole apple sources, hand-picked, including Golden Delicious from Washington, Northern Spy, Macintosh, Ida Red, and Empire from Ontario, Canada. The new crisp apple green juice is formulated with the highest quality ashwagandha at an effective dose of 600 milligrams for helping your body handle stress more effectively. And it's low sugar, only 2 grams per serving, but the taste is amazing for such a low sugar drink. Just add water, mix, and experience the joy of real food real fast. Go to Organifi.com, Organifi.com, and save 20% on Organifi products when you enter your Living 4D discount code, capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K, 20 during checkout. That's Chek 20 for your 20% discount on Organifi products during checkout. Enjoy Organifi's new crisp apple green juice. While you were talking about joy there, this popped up in my head. I've got this diagram that I'm putting in my new book, and I learned this many years ago, and honestly I don't even know how to reference it, so I have to just publish it without a reference because I don't know where I got it. But when I saw this, it stuck in my mind, and I don't know what I was studying, but it was something to do with mental, emotional health. But, you know, for those of you listening that can't see the diagram, I'll hold it up to the camera. For those of you that can see it, you just basically draw 3 circles so that they interpenetrate each other. So you end up with a space in the middle that's made of all 3 circles. In the middle space, you put the word joy. In the top circle, you put the words love to do. In the bottom left, you can put the words willing and able to do. And in the bottom right, you put the words need to do. So when it comes to keeping it simple or saying, you know, what do I want to focus on now? What are the things I can do to enhance my happiness, my movement, my diet, or my rest? Then you can look at them and say, of all the things that I could do, what would I love to do? Start there. And if none of them are things that you'd love to do, which one do you need to do? And if you got 10 of them that you need to do, but you're still feeling paralyzed by it all, then say, what am I willing and able to do? Am I willing and able to get a higher quality of water and hydrate myself? Am I willing and able to do one more push-up, or, you know, spend an extra 5 minutes walking today, or stop drinking so much Starbucks so I can get some leaky gut guardian. What do you call it now again?
Biome breakthrough.
Biome breakthrough. Yeah, I got to make that transition because I'm so conditioned.
I still do the same thing.
But anyhow, the product of that is joy, right? Because then every day we know that we're doing maybe something we love to do, hopefully. We're doing something we need to do. And if nothing else, we're doing what we're willing and able to do. And the joy is that we're growing. And that's where the growth edge is at. And as long as we, you know, keep our consciousness on the growth edge, then we don't turn into a fossil that ends up on an operating table somewhere or becomes a statistic. And we don't model to our friends and our family and our children how to live without joy. And really, joy is something that we have to take responsibility to create. So I think, you and I both were discussing before we started the podcast, as crazy as the world has been since the pandemic has started, it's been 2 of the greatest years of our lives because we're doing this, you know, and because we both know the world needs to change, and this is what change looks like. And though the motives of some of the people implementing the change are quite negative, it certainly wakes us up to what we want and are willing to work for, to create, to counterbalance those negative forces. And that's just the story of balance from the beginning to the end of every cycle, whether it be the grand yugas or your day.
Yes, it's in the Wu Wei sign, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was so eloquently illustrated throughout all cultures, throughout all time. The essences stay the same. The external is ever changing, and it's up to us to adapt to the circumstances we're in, because that is the pathway to growth, and you can take comfort within your own agency. And I think that's a beautiful aspect of the human condition, and what separates us maybe from the other animals in this form. We have great potential for evil, but we also have great potential for good. And so therefore, how can we move a little bit more towards the good side and be an agency of that? I think we're on the right path, and we can course correct when, inevitably we get off, and we all do. And so I think that is, the pathway of life, the pathway of humanity, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a grateful thing to be born a human.
Yeah, and if you do get off the path, you fall into a painful experience in an intimate relationship where you're fighting, or you decide to eat more pieces of cake than was ideal, and you wake up feeling shit the next day, or you over-exercise, or you talk yourself out of exercising until your body starts falling apart. I think one of the most important shifts in psychology we can make is, instead of saying, oh, that fucking chocolate cake, it made a mess of my body, damn it, just say, I chose to do that.
Yes.
And it really tasted good while I was doing it. I got a great sugar high. I love chocolate. And now I'm choosing to take a little break, let my body recover, so that when I choose to eat some more chocolate cake again, I can accept the responsibilities for the outcome. I know what's going to happen to me, and it's not the chocolate cake's fault. I didn't get attacked by a bag of corn chips or whatever. In other words, a lot of what we've got to do is become adults. And instead of using the words I have to, we can use the words I choose to. And we can give ourselves permission to say, hey, I've been good all week. I'm going to have a day of just recreational fun. I'm going to eat a little of this, drink a little bit of that. I'm going to live a little bit more loosely. And the next day, I'm probably going to feel like shit, but I'm going to wake up and say, I had a great day yesterday, and this is my hangover, and I'm going to celebrate that too. And that's my reminder to wait for at least 5 more days before I do it again.
Exactly.
Because if you do it every day, then you can get yourself into quite a nice little shithole.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's always the balance, and you want to be a little bit on the positive side of the table, and
Yes.
continue to monitor that. So it's maintain one's own accountability, and that is the nature of responsibility.
Yes.
You don't get rights and freedoms without taking responsibility for what that means. And I think a lot of people are looking at outside of themselves and maybe condemning other people, but you're not in charge of their life. You're in charge of yours own. And to take the responsibility of that brings the agency back to your daily practice. And your daily practice leads you to freedom with the prudent advocacy of self-discipline, reflection, and from that you become a responsible person, and a responsible person becomes an exalted member within your community and has the ability to influence those around you in a positive way, and not in a coercive way, but in an inspirational way. And inspiration, of course, is what we do with our own breath. We inspire, right? And so I guess that's our conspiracy, is that you and I are hoping to inspire other people to find and discover the power that they have within them to make positive choices in the world.
Yeah, and just a closing note on responsibility, your vitality is a direct measure of your response ability. So if you let yourself go too far, then you cannot manage your responsibility, because you don't have enough vitality to respond to what you need to respond to. So part of responsibility is not just saying, okay, it's my fault or whatever. It's actually realizing that if we love and care for each other and for ourselves and for the world, then we have to be conscious that if our vitality drops too low, that our response ability diminishes our responsibility, because I'm responsible for my children. But if I eat myself into a stupor or drug myself into a stupor and I can't be healthy enough and vital to engage them, then I don't have the response ability to manage my responsibility. So I think all of us looking at the world, if you're listening to this podcast, you know well enough that we all need to have response ability, because we all can't sit around and wait for somebody else to fix the world. And if we let people like Bill Gates do it, or Anthony Fauci, or Biden, or Klaus Schwab, then, well, we're going to wish we had exercised our responsibility before they start controlling it for us. And that puts them in the position of a parent and us in the position of a child. So if you want to have to live under the iron rule of another mommy and daddy that controls your every move, then stay ignorant and don't practice anything we just said. But if you want freedom and you want to be an example for others and inspire the children of the world to have the consciousness necessary to use technology in intelligent ways, and I think the very technology that's being used against us can free us. Everything, the same scientists that make dangerous chemicals can find healthy ways to support the soil. The same corporations that are making weapons of mass destruction can create tools of mass integration. In other words, you take every technology that's part of the problem and get geniuses that think morally and ethically behind it, and the same exact technologies can be what frees us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the new frontier for all of us. And I encourage all you young people out there to really step into your flow and follow your heart's passion. And if you're into computer technology, then find ways to do intelligent things with it. If you're into science, find ways to do intelligent things with it. If you're into dance, find ways to help people find more freedom through dance. I think that it's not a matter of reinventing the wheel. It's a matter of just using the wheel we have in ways that ultimately help us all integrate with each other and the planet, so that we can actually have a future that, you see, if we get this all right, instead of constantly chasing money to survive, we'll actually have time to sing, to dance, to have ceremony, to make music together, and to grow spiritually. And right now, we've created a world where we're striving to make more money to compensate for all the bills we've created that ultimately are the cost of medicating not doing the kinds of things you and I have been talking about for an hour and a half here.
I think that is the truth.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you, Wade, and thank you, Bioptimizers, for sponsoring the podcast. And I was asking you earlier, is there a specific discount code?
Indeed, there is. If they put code Paul10,
yes,
whether it's Magnesium Breakthrough or any of the other products
right
at our company, they get a 10% discount on everything. And of course, our education we give away for free.
Awesome.
And that's what it's called, the Awesome Course.
Very good.
So, I started out from very humble beginnings, and I am very mindful when people spend their hard-earned dollars towards trying one of our products, and that's why we always back it with a 365-day guarantee. Try the product. If it doesn't make a difference in your life, we give you all your money back. And if you do like it, we invite you to advocate it, to share it, to let people know that it was something that made a difference for you, and that we de-risk it for anybody in your sphere of influence. And
that's perfect.
And it's a way of giving back, and a way of making sure that we can always deliver on our promises to the best of our ability. And if for whatever reason it doesn't, well, guess what? Thank you for the experiment. Here's your money back. Go test it out to the next place and redeploy it in a way that does advocate for you. But
that's honest business.
We've been around for 20 years.
Mhm.
We've got a great research team. We're one of the few supplement companies that do have legitimate scientists doing experiments in a noble way for the advocacy of humanity, as you were suggesting. And I feel like the luckiest guy in the whole world that I get to be a part of that. And I've got a wonderful team. Everybody in the company follows a set of rules that we advocate every day, which is based in ethics and based in, helping humans become healthier,
Yeah.
from sick to superhuman.
Thank you.
And we're going to keep going as long as we possibly can until someone else picks up the torch and carries it on when I'm not able to or our team's not able to.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. So, hey, by the way, we've mentioned, is it Leaky Gut Breakthrough now?
Biome Breakthrough.
Biome Breakthrough, which
Yeah.
was Leaky Gut Gardening. We mentioned your magnesium complex.
Yeah, Mag Breakthrough.
Breakthrough.
Yeah.
But there's several other great products as well that we haven't talked about. My point is, go to bioptimizers.com, bioptimizers.com, and use your code Paul10 on checkout for a 10% discount, because you want to see all the other products they have. We've only talked about a few of them. We run ads, on all the different products, but that you'd have to listen to 10 podcasts to catch all those. But go look at all the products and say, based on what's going on with me right now and what I see written up on the website as to what they're best for, which one is the most important for me to invest in right now, and start your experiment on using real high quality supplements that really do get good results. And if you don't get the results, you haven't lost anything. Wait till give you your money back.
Yeah, and we have if you don't know, if you look at it and you get confused, it often happens, just reach out to our company. I've personally trained our staff to be able to respond appropriately to the dietary philosophy. A lot of people find that they clean out their guts and get the right probiotic and enzymes and hydrochloric acid relative for their bodies, that they can make a ginormous leap and they move from disempowered to empowered. And so we have, gut reset kits based on the dietary philosophy that you're engaged in right now. And so our staff will handle those. I have answered personally over 8,000 questions, which our staff leverages. And any question that comes through that they can't answer goes directly to me. And if I can't answer it, I'll let you know, and I'll try and direct you to someone who might be able to answer that as a service. And it's an honor and a pleasure to do so.
Yes, thank you. So awesome. And thank you to the rest of our sponsors, Organifi, Paleo Valley, and Symbiotica, for making such beautiful products and really working to create sustainable businesses and practices. Thank you for all of you for any purchase you make from the sponsors, because it supports the podcast and helps me devote the time to do the work to make a successful podcast. And that I love doing. And let's all work together to make the world a little better each day. And remember, 1-4-100, 1% a day with any of your 4 doctors for just 100 days, and you get 100% improvement on your report card. That's a straight A with a plus. If I'm your teacher, just know that I've reached out and given you an A+ for your 1% a day on any one of those 4 doctors for 100 days. And anyone can do that. So lots of love, you guys. I can't wait for a chance to bring another amazing podcast to you. I've got lots of them on the way. The world's full of amazing people. They just don't get enough airtime. So I think that's one of the reasons I love podcasting, is I like to find the wizards of the world like Wade and bring them to you, so you get to hear it from the people that really have devoted their lives to healing, growing, learning, and being an example for all of us. So lots of love. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Living 4D with Paul Chek and today's guest, Wade Lightheart. You can connect with Wade and Bioptimizers through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Bioptimizers. Wade is offering Paul's listeners a 10% discount on Magnesium Breakthrough, a full-spectrum magnesium supplement that complements your healthy lifestyle. Go to magbreakthrough.com/living4D and use the code Paul10. That's magbreakthrough.com/living, the number 4 and the letter D, and use the promo code Paul10. Follow Paul on Instagram at paul.chek, on Twitter at paulchek, or on his YouTube podcast channel, youtube.com/living4D with Paul Chek. You can watch more on Paul's blog at paulcheksblog.com and get your free subscription to Chek videos and more at the Chek Institute's new media site, chekiva.com. You can read the show notes and find links to the resources mentioned in this episode at chekinstitute.com/podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review at the top of the show page on Spotify or at the bottom of the show page if you are listening on Apple Podcast.